All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Evolution Podcast. So today I have a special guest. Going to be having a casual conversation with a former professional tennis player. We have a special guest for you today. And if you guys are wondering why I am also drenched up in a suit today, we're going to be having a webinar later today around 1 p.m. So I kind of, want to make sure I look a little bit professional for the webinar. So hence why. But today I have a special guest. So Louis, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
How we doing, guys? And just want to say, really glad to be on the show today. You are looking sharp, my brother. I appreciate the outfit. It looks good. So my name is Loius Skupien. I'm 21. I'm based out of the UK. I run the Talk 4 podcast. Have a couple of other ventures going on too. Run my own business, and I like fitness, and I work hard pretty much every day. It's a pleasure to be here, and always a pleasure to be on the other side of the microphone in the guest seat.
No, it's good to have you on. So so for those who aren't familiar with your podcast and what you do, can you tell us a little bit about the Talk 4 podcast?
Absolutely, yeah. So really started out as just a simple concept to have like a podcast that was a bit snappy, a bit more kind of quick fire than the traditional sort of long form podcast. And I got really lucky with my first guest, and the format was basically 4 questions for unique and interesting people. And I tell you what, man, looking back at it then, I had no idea how well that thing would do, where it would take me in the world with that sort of stuff. And so basically, I'm at 96 episodes now, really close to 100, and I've just been grinding away. I've had some of the world's most unique and interesting people on the show. I've had a lot of guys from the military actually as well. So military commanders like Commander of the Navy SEALs, Commander of Top Gun, nuclear submarine commanders. But beyond that, I've had famous actors as well, the movie editor of Mission Impossible, business owners, authors, just the whole runaround of people who qualify under the name of like super cool. So it's been a hell of a journey so far there.
So interesting. So what's the premise behind the podcast? Let's say I'm watching this right now. I'm new to Talk 4. What's the premise? What should I expect if I go on a Talk 4 podcast?
Yeah, so basically what I envisioned at the start was I didn't want to limit myself to a specific niche. So I didn't want to go, okay, I'm going to stick to like this very specific topic. I wanted to have flexibility to have anyone on. So really what I wanted to give to the listeners and the people who tune into the podcast is really just a unique experience each time. So I want everyone, it doesn't matter what walk of life you're in, I would like everyone to listen and be able to take something away from it, whether that's a bit of business advice, some motivation, something towards like a life skill. And I think every episode has that. So really what I tend to do is I tend to structure the episode in a specific way. So with the guest, I would like to always start with the backstory. So figuring out basically who this person is, what they represent, what they've done, and what their kind of their claim to fame would be in a sense. And then we kind of go into usually what is unique about their persona or their experience. So if they've had like a backstory that involves like getting into a certain role, or if they founded something, then we kind of talk about their progression into doing that and get into where they would be today. Then we would roll into kind of like the really actionable advice from their experience that could look into, for example, like, their business stuff, how they grew their business, motivation things. So one of my recent guests, for example, he was a combat veteran, Green Beret, Special Forces, lost his leg in a horrible insider attack, and he recovered, and he obviously had an amputation and got one of the prosthetic legs that they have in the military. And he is the first person to ever return to the Special Forces unit and actually operate at the tip of the spear in the military there. So really impressive guy, but we completely just dug into just motivation, how he got through that, mental strength, and just really actionable advice. So I think for everyone who kind of goes to listen, there's going to be a little bit of everything kind of in there. But there's always going to be something that you can at least kind of relate to and take away and ponder over or apply, at least, I think. So that's the way I like to go with it, man.
Interesting. So what's your background before you got into podcasting? Like what you do before, and why'd you get into podcasting?
Okay, so the kind of the medium version would be so I picked up the tennis racket for the first time at 4 years old and fell in love with it straight away. I was just going kind of locally with my dad and doing some training, and got noticed fairly quickly by the governing body of tennis in the UK called the LTA, one of their officials. And I got what's called like a wild card into some tournaments, and I just went and won them, and they were tough tournaments. So I did really well early on. Then I started to take half days at school to go and train, because we're starting to get more serious about it at that point, kind of towards, the 8, 9 sort of realm. And from there, it just became blatantly obvious that it was really going well. I won the national championships, and I got to a stage where I had to. I didn't have to. I got noticed by a sponsor when I was training one day, and basically after obviously a lot of back and forth, they fully sponsored my tennis career essentially. And then we were faced with the decision whether I'm going to stay in school or go to homeschooling. Obviously nowadays it's a slightly different story. Like homeschooling's become a lot more sort of mainstream in that sense. I'd say like it's a lot more common now, but back then really kind of like a dark horse in the herd sort of thing back then. So it was a big decision to make. But yeah, I went into tennis, that did really well there. Got to around 400, 500, and like I said, played for England, won some stuff there, and won the national championships. Did fantastically well, and I think that really kind of laid the the ethics behind tennis. That really laid like the groundwork for what I'm doing nowadays and the business side of things. So obviously, COVID strikes, nightmare. So my sponsors, they have to pull back on their funding because their business just got absolutely walloped out of existence pretty much. And at that stage, I'm kind of thinking, well, I don't come from a very, wealthy family at all, to be honest. So I've got to kind of do something here. And I've got a load of time sat in lockdown. What can I do? I had a little ponder at a few sort of businessy things before, like a couple of sneaker buy and resale stuff, and kind of trying to be crafty with a bit of Instagram page growing, and never really found much love there. But then I found this product on a supplier website for a sport that is called airsoft. For those who don't know, it's kind of like BB guns on steroids, basically, and it's a lot like paintball too. Hilariously good fun. Recommend you all go and try it. It's brilliant. And something I'd bought for one of my airsoft rifles, I noticed on this supplier's website was like 1/10 of the price I bought it for. So I bought loads of those, listed them on eBay, and sold them all off. And then had a kind of an interesting story to going into that business and how that all came about. But yeah, obviously, like I said, built my own business, and the podcast is really just a venture to build something for me too. And that's not just a business or a logo or an entity apart from me. So I wanted to kind of have something that's, for Loius Skupien as well. And I think I've done that. So that's kind of the condensed version, I'd say.
No, that's definitely interesting. So, and how's that business doing right now?
Really good. So the business is called Unveiling Tactical Airsoft. Like I said, I started off with kind of selling some stuff on eBay, and then found there were some policy problems that were on eBay, which made me go to kind of my strengths in a sense to kind of sell off all the stuff. I mean, it's a bit of a nightmare when you've got 60 of these items at home, and then you find out, okay, I've got a problem now in the selling platform that I'm using, and I've got like 3 shipments of more of these things going away because they were just selling like literally like lightning on eBay. So you got to get rid of it. So then went to Instagram, built the brand from there, and went and innovated my own product, made the own website, and started expanding the product range. And man, we started that in I think October of 2020 or something, and it's just still doing really well today. Really proud of it. It's a great brand, and it's a good website, and it's growing all the time. I'm pumped.
So would you say your background is a professional athlete? Because there's a few things where one of the few things I'm trying to figure out, and most people in general are trying to figure out, is what are the criteria, or more or less what are the prerequisites for success, right? So let's say what's the difference between you starting your ventures and what you're selling, and let's say another individual starting and then you achieve success, but then for some reason they flop and then they go, woes me, woes me, woes me. You understand? So would you say your background as an athlete in some way, shape, or form helped you in the business world?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, like I said to start with, the morals behind the whole tennis thing really laid a lot of the groundwork for what I'm doing now, I feel. So I think some of the most important things really that you learn in sport really is, starting at the kind of top of the food chain there, it's really just how good it feels to win and how to accept losses. Like that is one of the biggest things you're going to learn if you're in sports, and you have to just overcome that. Other than that, it's the simple stuff. It's sportsmanship, it's fair play, it's respect, it's honor, it's integrity. And beyond that, it's the kind of more actionable stuff too. It's the productivity stuff, making sure you're putting in the reps, going the extra mile. There's nothing fun about doing, for the people who know tennis, in training sessions. There's nothing fun about hitting 1,000 balls forehand cross court for an hour and a half or something, and then having to do stretching for 45 minutes afterwards, and then go and practice more serves after that. So, you've got to put in the reps. There's no other way around it. The competition is fierce. It's an expensive sport, and you've got to be really, really good to get anywhere with it. So I think other than that as well, it's like the timekeeping, the organization stuff, and just being proactive, and also teamwork. You've got to really work with your coach, and oftentimes you have a few different factors in place. So, for example, for me, when I was going away from home, even traveling to different countries and stuff, you'd have a physical trainer, you'd have like massage therapists, you'd have the tennis coach, then you obviously have parents and their sort of role play in that, and then obviously you have sponsors too. So you got to be a team player, and you got to figure it all out, and you got to play to all sides of that. But yeah, like I said, I just think that the kind of the stuff you learn in sport really translates to the business world 100%. And actually, some of the conversations I've had on the podcast too really reflect that from people in other sports too and other athletes. So yeah, I think the sport is a very fundamental part of actually becoming a good entrepreneur too. Just my opinion.
So here's a question for you then. Do you think if the pandemic never happened and, you never lost your sponsors, right, and everything was going on, would you have actually gone about doing what you did right now, or would you still be in the tennis career?
Really difficult to say because tennis is one of those sports where, I mean, the one thing I will say for the podcast that just it makes me quite happy is that I am never going to roll my ankle and never be able to podcast again. Simple as that. On tennis, it could happen any day. Like, you could get injured, you could do anything, roll an ankle, break a leg, whatever, and then you could be done in for good. But yeah, it's interesting. So when the pandemic hit, I just turned 18, and I had a whole last year of junior tennis left to go. So this was my year. I was 500 ITF juniors, and sights were set on junior Wimbledon. I had tournaments planned. I was doing well, really, really well. And obviously then you're in lockdown, and unfortunately you can't turn back the age clock, can you? Yeah, so no. I lose out in that last year of my junior tennis, and the sponsors go. So it's hard to say. I find it difficult to kind of think about it in a sense, because it's like, yes, if that hadn't happened, I could have done really well, or maybe I would have gone off, or maybe it would have hurt something or whatever. But ultimately, that's just what life has done. Like, I'm not going to spend too much time really thinking about what could have been, because I'm just really happy with the way it's gone. Like, at the time, sure, it's terrible. I mean, there's nothing good about it. I lost my sponsorship, man. My career, which I spent doing since 4, pretty much down the drain. I put all my eggs pretty much in one homeschooled basket at about 12 years old or something. So it was a massive, like, okay, what now? What am I going to do? Am I going to be sweeping streets? Like, what's going to happen in the future? So at the time, it was terrible. But I'd say something I heard in the podcast as well over my experience is just that I think bad things that happen to people, I think that they ultimately eventually contribute to the current growth. So I think that if you look back at some of the bad things that have happened to you, they were really bad at the time, or really big problems, or things you had to figure out. But I challenge people to find something that hasn't in some way brought them to almost like a better person and a better version of you, in a sense. I think that these bad things that happen like that, in the long run, it actually it contributes big time to the current persona and the current growth. And I have no regrets. I love where I'm at now. I'm doing some big work, and I wouldn't change a thing, if I'm honest. I think it's gone how I wanted it to go.
So I'm listening to what you're saying right now, and almost it's very different and very contrary to what most people would say. I'll give you an example. Let's say, someone who is, on par to be a professional, because football is very big in America. I don't know, is football a big thing in the UK?
Yeah, it's massive in the UK.
It is
absolutely huge. Yeah.
No, not soccer, because we all know soccer was the original stuff. But football, it's the original football. Soccer is the original football because you actually kick it with your foot. But I don't want to piss off 50% of the audience here. But football, actual American football, where you run and give the other person a concussion. That's in the UK as well, right?
Somewhat. I don't follow it that closely. I tell you what, man. When you're in a sport as deep as I was, like with the tennis and stuff, you've got the mental capacity for that and not much else. Trust me.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
didn't play too close.
No, it's interesting because the reason why I'm asking that is because a lot of people when they're growing up, like you get into high school, you get into a sport. My son's 5 right now. I'm gonna be putting him in pretty much gonna put him in soccer because I'm
Nice.
not really big on the football. I mean, I'm pretty sure he can have a good career from that, but gonna put him in soccer. So one of the key things there is you see a lot of athletes. They play that they get hurt, just like they get like an ankle injury or they tear a muscle or something happens, and then boom, they're unable to play. Right. And you could tell, right? Because the reason there's 3 parts to the scenario, right? So growing up, they've been playing the sport just kind of like that. They've been playing the sport. They've been really good at it. And on top of that, everyone behind them is like, what, you're going to be in the NFL. You're going to be, let's say, hockey. You're going to be in the NHL. You're going to be this. You're going to be that. You're going to be. Everyone is like, and then you start to define your identity by
Yeah.
amateur, affirmation again for people. And then something happens, and then boom, it's taken away from you. But then most people go down the other way, in which they go down the path in which of like, my life, if this never happened to me, then they become drug addicts. They start drinking. They start getting to a point in which basically it's just super detrimental in general. But what would you say? Because what would you say was that tipping point or that key point where you were able to keep yourself from going down the drain of saying, hey, everything I've worked for, I have to put it aside? What's that key thing? Because there's a lot of athletes that are going to be watching this right now, people who might be in 18, 19, 20, they're going to be getting into the pro leagues. What would you say to them? If something happens, don't go down the drain. Kind of, you if you get the question there.
I do. I think this is going to be an answer that might offend a lot of people, but you're going to have to deal with it because it's the truth. I think that a lot of it is ego. Like you build up this persona, like you said, you build up this persona of yourself. So yeah, it's taken me a little while to remove all the tennis player stuff from my bio and all that. But I think, yeah, you build this persona up, and when you see success at a young age, especially in something like sport, you're gonna have these kind of set expectations of yourself and family and everything. And obviously, with social media nowadays too, you like to post about stuff, you like to build your following around the same industry and everything, and you can build up this whole idea of who you're meant to be. But I think it's really important, and it's a tough pill to swallow, but everything that you're doing in sport or in business or whatever, it's all just part of your journey. It's not, and you don't know the destination yet. That's the thing that people need to understand. Like, you could be doing this one thing that you think is going to be the most important thing for you in the future and stuff, and you fast forward 5-10 years, you might be looking at a completely different landscape. Like, you could be in a completely different industry. Anything can happen anytime. You can get, I mean, I know tennis players who even one of them got long COVID, and one of the hardest working athletes that I've seen, who I trained with, she's fantastic, got long COVID, got inflammation of the heart from it, and is now disabled, got a disabled badge, and is doing some work with charities and stuff. And, whole career is just down the drain, completely gone. So this kind of stuff can happen. So you need to not hold on to that, who that is, essentially, all the time. But in terms of like not going down the bad route, it's tough. It can be really tough. Like, it's a shock to the system, and it's easy to start thinking, well, what am I going to do now? Am I screwed? But ultimately, what you got to do is something that my dad told me at a young age. He calls it like the golden rule for life. And it's very simple, but it is the truth. In any situation that you're in, it's a bit like chess. Like, you can be losing, you can be winning, or whatever. The best thing you can always do at any given moment is just make the best move possible. You start to rush, you start to throw your toys out the pram, you start to worry. Even if you're losing that game, it's just going to fast forward the end result. All you can do at any point in any situation is just calculate and make the best decision and best move possible. For me, it was natural progression. I'm quite sporadic in how I sort of attack certain projects and stuff. Not necessarily a good trait, but that's just me. So naturally, I was kind of like, well, I'm going to go to this now. I'm going to build this up, and I'm going to go and do this now. And yeah, so I just kind of evolved with it, really, I'd say. And yeah, it's just, it can be tough. It can be really tough. And life is like that. You're going to get thrown curveballs all the time, but you got to stay adaptable, and you got to sometimes lose a bit of ego. And that's the truth.
That's interesting. Now, this is just a little bit of a personal question. So how do you balance, being an entrepreneur and relationship? Like, are you in a relationship right now?
No, I'm not right now. No.
No, you use any of the dating apps?
No. I like to stay clear of those things at the moment. I'm laser focused, but I've got a great group of people around me, and I've got a person who is my kind of life person right now as well, who's really helping me out with a load of things. We've got mutually a great bond that we do great stuff with. Absolutely.
Interesting. So what do you think about the current dating world in the modern scenario per se?
Oh my God. I think we're I think we're in a plane and it's going down. That we've got a lot of problems. I think it's very difficult nowadays. I think maybe controversial. I'll just say what I think from the data that I've been fed pretty much and that I've seen, and I just think that there's a lot of overinflated standards. I think that people are unrealistic, and I think people are dating for the wrong reasons now. Like, you just have to go on Instagram and have a little scroll through the posts and stuff and see those little quick interviews and stuff on the streets and everything. And I tell you what, man, it baffles me how some of these people think that their actions are okay. Like, I mean, cheating is just through the roof, and people just dating for the wrong reasons. I think that the way out of it, really, man, is just you got to find the person who you connect with as a best friend, and then you've got to and then you've got to progress from there. If you start dating them for money, if you start dating them for just their looks and stuff, then it's just born to fail. It's just it's an aircraft without wings. It's just going to flop over a certain amount of time. And I think you got to search for the right morals. And unfortunately, there's not that many people out there nowadays, I don't think, who have the right morals. But then you look at some of these people. I'm not going to say boys, girls, because I think it's very, very similar. But I think some people just have a ridiculously unrealistic list of expectations, and their must-haves to be in a relationship with me, sort of thing. And the truth is, man, you don't get to choose that. You fall in love with someone, and that is just how it goes, and that's how it's meant to be. If you start,
so do you think? You think my question for you? Do you think most of that inflated, self-standard per se is coming from social media?
I'd say a lot of it comes from social media. Yeah, I mean, people are setting, these people, these influencers and stuff. They set a high standard, man. But I mean, is it realistic? I didn't think so. I think people have got the wrong idea. But I don't like how it is right now. I think if people were a bit more traditional with the whole thing, I think they'd be doing a bit better. And I just think that people just gotta go back to the roots of how it should be, really, and how it should be. Man, you just got to find the right person who you click with, who you fall in love with, and then go from there. And I like I said, I'll just emphasize one more time. I think if you're going to have something that lasts, you have got to be best friends with that person, either before or during. It cannot just be a relationship. You have got to be tickety freaking boo with that person for it to last, I think. And I think people are skipping certain things now, but you got to be an integral person too. Like, you can't take shortcuts for that sort of thing. So it's a weird market right now. I don't think dating apps is helping it. I don't think social media is helping it, and I think people need to make some improvement, have a word with themselves.
Do you think it's ever? I mean, do you think it's ever going to change though? That's the thing. Do you think there's a light at the end of the tunnel?
It's I'd love to be wrong about this, but I think it's going to get worse before it gets worse in this instance, man. The problem is that you look at how guys are nowadays, and you've got this hierarchy of the top few percent of men who are insanely good looking, blessed with their genetics or whatever, and they get all the girls, right? And then you've got a disproportionate amount of guys who are even just average looking. I'm not going to say any names, but I know people, even people who look decent, they're getting nothing nowadays. I can't figure it out, but it blows me away. It's just there's such a big divide between this very inclusive, very top tier sort of look of people, and then this group of other guys who are just seeing nothing. But the problem is that the girls nowadays who have this, they set these expectations, and they have the social media, and they're doing all this stuff, and they all want to shoot for the top. They even, I'm going to use numbers. Like a 6 out of 10 girl wants a 10 out of 10 guy. Like, why wouldn't they? But the problem is that those expectations are just unrealistic. So what you end up with is this top tier of guys who are getting all of it, and then this massive divide with the other ones who's just creating loneliness. And I think with the whole AI thing now that's coming in, OnlyFans, all this stuff, that's why it's just so rampant now. Like, guys are getting desperate, guys are lonely, man, and it doesn't look good. It really doesn't. So I think if there's one thing to say to your listeners is if you got someone in your life who you love dearly and you think they're awesome and you guys click, I think you need to just cling to that, because there ain't that many fish in the sea anymore. People who are going to be exactly what you're looking for.
What's interesting is, I think with the number of men who are single now in the recent market, I think 1/3 of men under the age of 30, between 18 and 30, are single, and some high number of that are virgins, and you have this insane stats going on, and there's like an increase in male loneliness situation. But it's interesting there. Because social media, we could say social media is to blame. We could say, the dating apps, we could say the dating market, we can say all sorts of things, right? But what's interesting, because you made a key point. You said the top 1%, top 2% of men are like having a great dating life. And you have the average guys that just like barely like, scraping by. And what I hear from that is that just basically means you have to step up as a guy. Right? It's like, it is a saying that in America now that's like, most people say, but it's like the 100,000 is the new 300,000 is the new 100,000, like USD, right? So that means that, what does that mean? That means that basically if you were making $50,000 a year, that's not going to cut it anymore. Now you got to get to a position where you were like basically making more. And what do I do? What I think the definition of, I don't know, what would you define as a top tier man?
So I think the definition of a top tier man is really what I think it's very simple. And I think that's a man who is, it's hard to explain it, because people have so many like very specific things, but the truth is it is simple. Like, if you're in good shape, if you take care of your body, if you're healthy, if you have good morals and you have good aspirations, you don't even have to have a load of money. Just, have good aspirations, go into a good career or something. I'm not, just because I was homeschooled, I'm not dissing university or college or anything. Man, go and get a degree and get a good job, work hard and be professional. I think the problem is that we are in a society where it is just laced with this instant gratification stuff and so many hooks: alcohol, drugs, cigarettes, vapes, fast food, lots of it. It's just, we are just rampant with unhealthy stuff, and it's all so addictive. So I think it's so, this is actually something I was thinking about earlier, that my philosophy almost for people in general nowadays, like men and women alike, is that you, me, everybody around me, the people outside that window right there, we and our bodies are a platform. What does that mean? We have so much potential. It is insane. Like, you go and look at some of these top athletes and what they can do. You go and look at some of these entrepreneurs, what they've created. My God, we are a unique and deeply intricate machine that is capable of some of the most mind-blowing things. And we have, all of us, got so much potential to do great things, but we also have our flaws. We are also susceptible to addiction. We have these things that can take us down. So I think it's really interesting to see that we've got this divide. Like, for example, on my podcast, I've seen the most elite people in the world: SEAL Team 6, DevGru, Navy freaking SEALs, the people that you send to kill the people who would see America in flames, that kind of stuff, and the people who are just the most down to earth and just incredible overachievers ever. And you listen to their stories, and they too have had problems. They've had addictions. They've had these things they've had to overcome. So I think, to go back to the question and the answer, I just think that you need to recognize that you are a platform that's designed to be upgraded, and you are capable of doing the most profound and amazing things with that body and with that mind of yours. But if you allow society and you allow this culture to rip into that potential, then that's where it all starts to go downhill. So, you know, for the listeners out there, I'd just say, you know, consider what you're passionate about and go and just work hard and just avoid those things that will bring you down, those addictions and those dopamine hits and the things that just make you a lesser person. It's not worth it. So yeah, in terms of being a good masculine man nowadays, or being one of those top percent of people, I think it's very simple. Make the right decisions that you know to be right and stay away from the bad ones. That's what it comes down to.
Interesting. There's a lot you said there. You mentioned a lot of things. You mentioned, you know, staying away from addictions. You mentioned working hard. You mentioned a few things. I want to expand a little bit on that. In the sense as to, I personally think, to be not even a top tier man, a top tier individual in general, there's a few things that I believe are necessary. I personally believe that we need to have addictions. But this is where it gets interesting, because someone's going to hear this and say, he just said we need to have addictions. How dare he? I say we do need to have addictions. I believe so. But you need to choose what you're addicted to. I'll give you an example. If you choose to be addicted to drugs, alcohol, all those negative stuff, and which comes with consequences, because everything comes with consequences. I'm going to tell you this. Everything you do, every time you decide to you get on the road and drive, there's a consequence of something might happen. But here's the key point I'm talking about. In the senses to addictions, in the senses to, are you going to be addicted to your family? Are you going to be addicted to work? Are you going to be addicted to working out? Because I believe working out is an addiction. Because you have to understand, people who work out are people who enjoy working out and work out every day. I work out every single day. I've not missed a single day of workout in 3 years. Is it an addiction? Yeah. I love work. That's my thing. Is I wake up very early in the morning because because at the end of the day, success is a consequence of your actions. Right. So I believe that, one, you need to pick what you're addicted to, because I believe as human beings, if you don't give your all into something, you're not going to see 100% of results. So that's one. And then number two, I believe hard work is necessary. But let's look at it this way. If, you know, you work hard at, you know, cleaning gutters, I think there's respect in every profession. But let's say you work hard at cleaning gutters and you make $20 an hour, right? Reputable, make $20 an hour. You do a 10-hour shift, you make $200. Okay. Now, let's say you increase your skills and now you work at a job in which you make $40 an hour, but you work 10 hours. Now you make $400 in a day, right? So I believe working hard is important, but you also need to pay attention to the position that you're in working hard, because you need to be paid what you're worth, which means you need to increase the value of your time. So most people say, yeah, I'm going to work hard, but you're working hard for $8 an hour. And like I said, I do not disrespect any profession, because I believe everything is necessary. And I believe every profession you're in is absolutely necessary. But the position you're in is very important, because think about it. You work 40 hours a week, and the CEO of the same company you're in works, hypothetically, 40 hours a week, but you should be working more if you're an executive. Works 40 hours a week, you do 40 hours. The CEO makes $340,000 a year plus $100,000 bonus. You make $40,000. Same amount of work, but you're in a different position. So I believe working hard is important, but I believe you need to position yourself in a position which you're working hard. So to be a top tier individual, top tier man, top tier woman, top tier whoever it is you identify as, I personally believe that you need to be in a position to make more. And I just want to I don't want to take the spotlight here, because Louis, this is this podcast about you. But to talk about the dating scenario, and I'll tell you guys about the dating scenario. So I want to, if you can split the screen here, I want to kind of have a chat with Louis. So we had so back in 2014, I'll give you this is a funny experiment I did in 2014. So 2014, I was trying to learn the dating market. 2013, 2014. So I did a dating experiment. There's a book called Go for No. I can't remember who the author is, but there's a book called Go for No. The premise of the book is to go get as many rejections as possible. That's the main problem. So imagine because most people suffer from anxiety, right? Approach anxiety of whatever it is. So imagine if you're like, okay, I'm so scared to talk to girls. Oh my God, if I talk to her, she's going to tell me no. She's going to tell me she's going to flip me off. And you go, you know what? The goal is to go say hi. And she's like, oh, get away from me. You're so gross. Oh, cool. Awesome. I'm winning the game, because the more rejections I get, the more I win. So I did that. And at the end of it all, I think I had gotten about 398 rejections in a year, 398 of.
Jeez.
Yeah. I think I had at the time, and I was still in college, but I was closing about 12, 13%. of that. So that was still very, very good numbers if you asked me at the time. But now, obviously, now I don't do that anymore. But that skill set translated into sales, right? Because I'm like, okay, now I know if I go get as many rejections, the more rejections I get, the more I put myself out there, the more money I make. Like the webinar we're doing today is just an impromptu. My head of marketing is like, hey, we need 3 weeks to prepare. We need to do this. We need to do that. We need to do this. And I'm like, I don't have a presentation. I don't have anything. Let's turn on the camera. Let's jump on there. If I bomb, I bomb. If it makes sense, it makes sense. If it's good, it's good. But it's the activity that counts. So I think in today's day and age, I think there's just not a lot of people who are willing to put themselves out there and take the risk. Would you agree?
I would agree with that 100%. In terms of like the dating stuff as well, I think that like what you did back then, maybe slightly different now, because the thing is you got a lot of scare out there with the whole,
That's true.
the whole like the feminism thing right now, and the way people are kind of going about these interactions and stuff. It feels like there's a lot more. I know I use the word danger because I actually think there is real danger to and consequences to doing this the wrong way. I think guys are just avoiding doing that because it's like, well, I mean, the risk is now outweighing the reward potentially here. So, but you're right. I think guys and guys and gals, we don't put ourselves outside the comfort zone enough, and that's what that is. Like you're right. It's like the tennis thing. Me going into tennis, that's translated into business. What you did there, that's translated into sales. It's true. It's life skills, but it's also just improvement. So you got to be open to that improvement, and you got to go and put yourself in situations where you actually can have the opportunity to grow, because discomfort, that's what leads to growth. And I'm sure the first 2-3 times you approached those girls, it probably wasn't as comfortable as it was at number 300, was it?
No, not even the slightst bit. But I 100% do agree with you, because I think now we have very high tensions compared to 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, you could strike, people were more friendly too. Now with the advent of TikTok and all of the social media platforms, it's kind of getting a little bad. But you know what? If I were to be 17, 18 again, in this day and age, which is still, thinking about that, I'm like, God, how in God's name did I survive as an 18-year-old? But again, in this day and age, you know what I would work on? I would work on my social media. So which means I would have the most like the best Instagram out there. Like, I mean, I would have professional stuff. Like I'd have the most deck, because I think now everything is so digital. Like, think about it. You make your money online. We make our money online. Right? We get people who sponsor ads and all that stuff, right? We may come on, same thing. We could do a presentation like the webinar. If someone might like, hey, I want to work with you guys. But we do all of our stuff online. So I think everything is now getting so digitized that I think if you don't have a digital presence, just like your podcaster right now, are you blue check? Are you a blue check on Instagram?
Sure am.
See? So look, I guarantee you right now, if you went to like, hey, you DM'd and you're like, hey, hi, I saw you were cute, and I guarantee you, because look at it. If you look on Instagram, right, it's gonna be like message from this person, and then boom, Louis, blue check. It's like, damn, who is this guy? He's a famous podcaster, tennis player, the whole 9 yards. But you mentioned something, that the dating topic is a very interesting topic, and I did a podcast with a guest, and that really, really took off because we were talking about dating. But you mentioned a lot of things about AI. Do you think AI is here for good or for bad?
Great question. So this comes at a really funny time, because the very last guest I had on my podcast was his name is Tucker. His call sign is Cinco Hamilton, and he was an F-35 test pilot and commander of the F-35 development commander over there in the US. But he is currently the chief of AI test and operations commander of that department in the US Air Force. So the guy's big in this space, and AI is a hell of a topic. It's so it was very interesting talking to him. I think what's evident is that it is here to stay now. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. Yeah, Pandora's box is open with AI now. It's here, it's coming, and it's going to keep going. I think that AI is, I have to say the conversation with him changed my mind frame slightly towards it a bit. I think it's important very, very important to not get mixed up in the noise of what everyone is saying. Because, I got it the other day, I got a tweet, people saying about AI is this, and then an Instagram story like AI is dangerous, AI has done this. And there's a lot of misinformation out there. Like, you got to remember, man, the news, I spoke to a guy from the news about this, literally. The news, they run things that have these kind of titles and these sort of wordings, and they love it because that is what creates the interest. It's these controversial topics that rile people up and scare people. It's negativity. That's what the news is. It's they negativity creates their viewership. That's pretty much the bottom line of it. So I think it's easy to catastrophize AI, but the truth is that it's in its early stages. Like Cinco said this as well. It's still a toddler walking around the room. We've got a big future, and AI is going to be a massive part of that. I think used as a tool to enhance things, and a tool to express better. I think I agree with that. I think that's a good thing. But when you start doing all this AI generated artwork and stuff, that's where I come off the train. I think that is diminishing the achievements and accomplishments and hard work of true human intellect and creativity. In terms of the military and stuff like that, it's scary stuff. No doubt about it. You hear the stories, and it's a very difficult thing to attack.
If you don't mind, I'm going to challenge it. There's a point you brought up there saying if you do AI artwork and AI stuff, that's where it is like, you kind of, that's where you draw the line. I'm going to ask you a question. Do you believe life is competitive?
Absolutely. Of course it is. I mean, you're competitive to other people, you're competitive to your competitors, and you're competitive to yourself. Whether you like it or not, you're competing. Like, that's what it is. That is life. You're right. Yeah.
So let's think about this, right? So I would consider you pretty much a professional tennis player, right? So you played since you were 4, and how old are you now?
I'm 21.
Okay, 21. So that's roughly, if I'm math correctly, it's about 17 years, would you say?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
17
years.
years.
17.
So let's say you're 21 right now, 17 years of practice since you were 4. Basically, you learned how to play tennis before you learned how to speak English properly. That's basically because, you fully develop around the 5, 6, 10. Again, anyone can question this. But 17 years of practice. Now, let's think about it in perspective where now you're playing against a player that's only been playing tennis ever for 6 months. How likely are you going to win?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Very likely. Now, let's think about it this way. Let's think about it from this perspective where you've been playing for 17 years, and now you have this guy's playing for 6 months, but he has an AI stuff in his glasses that can basically predict every move that you're going to make. It studied your patterns. It knows everything about you before you even swing, it already knows where the ball is going to go, and it's telling him to go there. Now, with that advantage, how likely is it that you're going to win?
Well, it's difficult to say because AI comes out as it's prescriptive, or it's autofill, or it's predicting things basically. So ultimately, it's based off calculations. I don't know. Have you? I don't know. Did you follow the whole the game of Go when they put AlphaGo, the AI
No.
up against the world champion Lee Sedol, and they made a documentary about it called AlphaGo. Did you see that?
Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Really good watch, free on YouTube. It's a Google thing, and there's this game called Go. It's been around for thousands of years. It's Chinese, and it's incredibly intricate and it's incredibly difficult. I mean, there is literally billions and billions of permutations and things, ways that the game can play out basically over many hours. And for years, they tried to kind of get AI to figure out like where a way to win this game basically, and how to figure that whole thing out. And they just kept hitting hurdles essentially. So they kept falling flat on their face because it just couldn't understand. It just couldn't work on it. So this company called Google DeepMind, they created this system called AlphaGo, which is trained on God knows how many games and experience, and they started pitting it up against some of the quite fairly renowned players in the space, and they all thought they would never win, and it wiped the floor with them. And then they put it to the ultimate test where they put it against the world number 1 of this game called Lee Sedol. like I said, great watch, really good to see it, and it's best of 5 games basically. So they had this. It was massive, it was hugely televised, watched by millions, and every expert in the whole thing was saying Lee Sedol is going to absolutely wipe the floor 5-0 against this thing over many days, and it goes and wins, and it beats him the first game and the second game, and then it makes this move that everyone thought was a massive mistake, and everyone thought, oh my god, the computer's screwed up, we've found its limit, this is where it's the problem, and then 30 moves later, they recognized that was actually one of the best moves ever played in the game of Go, and everyone thought that was a mistake. And then this computer then wins, a couple more times against this guy, and then the same thing happens again. So it makes this move, and I think the 4th game where everyone thought this must be some incredibly deep, intricate move that's going to change the game of Go forever or something. And it turned out it was a massive mistake because it just did not know what to do against this guy in his final game. So it won 4 games out of 5, and this Lee Sedol won 1 game. And it's just so interesting to see it because you look at AI, and it's got so much potential, and it's got so much like ability to understand things so much faster and deeper and further ahead than we have, but it's not able to not make a mistake always. Like there can be problems and there can be difficulties, but I think you should go and watch that. You should go and watch it. It's about.
I totally will, guys. I totally will. But the main premise to the point I was trying to make is in a game of competition, right? If, let's say, for instance, obviously I'm not a renowned artist, but if I had an AI system that painted an art, and then all of a sudden, it's like everyone's like, wow, you are the best painter. I'm like, no, I wasn't. I just had an AI system do it. I think it doesn't. I think it gives an advantage. It helps. What would take you 17 years to learn, with the help of AI, you can do it in a matter of a week, 2 weeks to a month. So I personally am a big believer in this. Just because you're not using AI doesn't mean your opponent is not using AI. There's one of my big mentors I watch his stuff is I don't know if you're familiar with Patrick Bet-David.
I think the name rings a bell. But yeah,
Valuetainment, the podcast, PPD podcast. But he said something saying choose your enemies wisely, right? But I'm a big believer. I'm still yet to read the book, but he has a book called Choose Your Enemies Wisely. It's just basically business planning for the audacious. That's how they define it. In a way, we all have enemies. We all have villains that we're trying to defeat, right? We all have villains, right? Most people choose the wrong villains, and then they go 20 years down a path, and then all of a sudden they realize like this was the wrong decision to make. I'm a big believer in life is competitive. If I'm going to be in a race, would I rather have a Honda Civic or would I rather have a McLaren? Right? So it's the tool amplifies the driver, right? So I'm a big believer in the senses to AI. Yes, it's gonna. I think another reason why I'm defending it a lot is because our business is centered on AI. We do a lot of our recent product that we just launched is an AI. Have you worked in sales before?
Well, I run my own business. Everything we do is in sales.
Have you done cold calls?
I actually have not done cold calls. No, I have not.
Now, a lot of people are afraid of that. Now, we're coming out next month with a new stuff where you can actually clone your voice for cold calls. So the AI can make as many calls as you want. It could do anything from 1,000 a day to 100,000 a day. Depends on what you need, right? But the better part of it is you can use your own voice to do it. So which means when people talk to you, it's like, whoa. But then again, why am I saying that? I'm saying that because to be able to do 10,000 calls in a business or run ads or whatever it is, you needed a specific level of expertise. Like we have an AI tool that launches ads. You need a specific level of expertise to be able to run marketing. But now you don't. You just tell the AI, hey, I need this and this. Do it. And I think it just makes the playing field. If you know how to use AI, it makes the playing field like even crazy. Like I give an example. Midjourney, Midjourney, right? The tool. It actually created such a realistic photo of me that people thought like me. So I wanted to do something, and I was like me because I don't like putting my kid on social media. I don't believe you should. So I said, all right, do a image of me, like kind of like a replica, somewhere like a kid, 5-year-old son. So it'd be like, oh, this is your son. I don't want to put because then again, the internet's a dangerous place. And dude, it was so realistic. The people thought it was my kid. Right. But
Wow.
another reason why I'm saying that is because, dude, I could literally on Instagram just go, all right, Midjourney, make 20 images of me here doing this and Lamborghini and that and this. And I'm like, oh my God, who is this guy? Which is kind of crazy. But I think AI, if you know how to use it, can be the difference between you increasing your income and staying at the level that you want.
Yeah, I agree. I'm using AI right now. So, for example, on my podcast, there's a program called Opus Clip, and
Yeah, we use Opus Clip.
Works a treat. I mean, oh God, the amount of time that thing saved is insane. ChatGPT. I mean, who isn't using ChatGPT nowadays? On the app I use called Canva for my graphic design, there's a small application called Enhancer. And let's put it this way, I mean, I've done graphic design and stuff, and I've seen what people can do with an old photo. Nothing compares to that. Like, you can put an old granulated low pixel photo into that thing, and about 10 seconds later, it will pop out like the sharpest, clearest image of whatever it is you put in. Even people, like if you have an old family photo or something, it does the trick on that too. AI is a tool, and I think it's, at least right now, I think it is fantastic to use it if you can enhance the things you're doing and do a better job and save time and, enhance the quality of your work and stuff. But in terms of like artistic stuff, like kind of creating music and kind of artwork and design and stuff, I think that there are some things in some industries where we should leave it to just pure human, the human brain,
Human
like
creativity.
yeah, I think there's a unique beauty to that you could never replicate in something that's generated, and we need to keep a level of tradition and integrity as well. So I think ultimately AI comes down to ethics and the people using it. Like I said, it's a tool. It's not a miracle. It is computer programming, and how we use it is going to be the thing. But ultimately, it comes down to one simple thing. It's the ethics behind it and the people who are using it and for what purpose. That's the end of the story.
Oh, perfect. Well, I love it, Lou. So if people want to learn more about the Talk 4 podcast, they want to work with you, they want to be a guest, is there any projects you're working on, or how can people find you?
Yes, the nice thing about having a unique name is I had no problem with the social media handles and the website and stuff. So my name is Loius Skupien, LOUIS SKUPIEN. That's all you need to know. It's the website is louiskupien.com, Instagram Loius Skupien, Twitter, Facebook, a lot, all there. Email is louis@louiskupien.com. Yeah, I mean, like I said at the start, I've just had such a privilege to speak to the people I have in the podcast, and I think, go and listen to an episode. You're going to come out of it with something to apply to your business, or some motivation, or just something that's going to brighten your day, or a funny story, or something like that. It's just you're going to come out of it with something good. Off the back of a couple of my podcasts as well. I got to fly in an L-39 Albatross fighter jet with a Top Gun graduate fighter pilot, which I recorded a video of. And I also got to fly in the Red Bull aerobatic helicopter upside down, doing flips and rolls and all kinds of cool stuff with the Red Bull helicopter pilots, and made videos of that. So if you fancy seeing something fun, go and check it out. In terms of the future, right now I'm gearing up for another cool experience flight, hopefully this weekend. And I'm working super hard right now on my new project called Fights On, and that's with a Z at the end of Fights. And that's going to be something really special. It's something I hold deep to my heart, and it's an expression of me into what I'm doing off the back of the podcast too. So yeah, I'm thrilled to be doing that as well.
Awesome. So definitely, guys, the links are going to be in the description to work with Louis, and definitely go connect with him, go show some love. And Louis, it was an absolute pleasure having you on. And once again, guys, if you're on YouTube, just do me a favor, hit the subscribe button. We're currently at 25,000 subs. Let's go. The goal is to get to, as the new year starts, I want to end the year next year, 2024, with 100,000. So go ahead and show some love to the channel. Go ahead, hit the subscribe. Also, let's go ahead and hit the follow button as well if you're watching this on Spotify. And then again, guys, it was a pleasure having everybody on. And as I always like to say, take care, enjoy, bye-bye, have a good one, and see you.